Welcome, everyone. I'm Mirek Wierzba. I'm Engineering Director at Ocado Technology. And I'm here to tell you a story of how we consolidated our core observability around Grafana Cloud. I'll talk about some challenges that we've been facing, the strategy that we built for observability, and the journey of moving from several different vendors and services into one consolidated platform. At start, a little bit of a context on us, so Ocado Technology. Ocado has evolved from a UK startup to a global technology company that powers world's most forward-thinking groceries around the world, powers them with end-to-end platform built on pioneering robotics, automation, and AI. But what does it mean? So we build a Ocado Smart Platform, an OSP, that addresses everything from the e-commerce, where users are shopping for their food online, to the supply chain, where all the products are getting delivered to the warehouse, fulfillment, that in our highly automated warehouses, hundreds of robots and robotic arms are picking and completing the orders and prepare them to be ready to be delivered, and to the last mile, where it actually gets delivered to the users' homes. Those of you who are from UK, you might be familiar with what Ocado is. But if you're outside of the UK, you might still use our technology, but not be aware of that, as we have 12 partners across the globe outside of the UK, from the North America to Europe, Asia, and Australia. So running this platform, keep it up and running, making sure it's reliable, we need to rely heavily on observability. But the complexity of the OSP, as well as the rapid growth of our company, you can see that many of our partners went live in the last few years. It all resulted into a pretty fragmented observability landscape. Those data are from a couple of years ago. So we've been using 13 different observability tools and services from 7 different vendors. We had 3 in-house built solutions, and over 100 applications were sending like 15 terabytes of logs every day, 18 terabytes of metrics volume, in this particular case to the new Relic. So one of the other reasons why we had such fragmented landscape was that a few years back, there wasn't really that many providers that were offering a comprehensive end-to-end observability platform. So we've been facing some challenges because of all that. So there was an architectural complexity. We had to put a lot of effort and time and energy to keep the whole architecture and whole observability ecosystem up and running. It was sometimes resulting in operational fragility. We've been suffering from some of the issues and incidents. Unsustainable costs, as you can imagine. Managing 7 different vendors was difficult, different pricing models, paying for licenses to all of those providers. Optimizing for cost efficiency was basically difficult, and the bill was increasing. We've been using, in some cases, closed source products like JVM agents to send data to New Relic and so on, which limited our ability to control the data. And developer friction, one of the most important aspects. So our users, engineers across Ocado, had to switch between different tools, different UIs that impacted the ability to troubleshoot and quickly respond to issues. So we thought about how to solve that, but we didn't want to address just one of the problems. We thought about how we can address all of them. So we came up with a set of user and business focused outcomes, some sort of goals, as well as principles, technical guidelines that would guide us there. The goals were to improve cost efficiency, reduce MTTR, number of incidents and incidents impact, reduce the cognitive load for our users, as well as empower our users to leverage the observability more. And to achieve that, we wanted to simplify our architecture and make it more reliable. We wanted to unify observability to one single platform. And we wanted to standardize on open source to get a little bit more control and flexibility in the future. So actually, let's go back. Then we've done market research to find a provider that could satisfy all those needs. We've run a bunch of tests, trials, proof of concept, and so on. And we concluded the Grafana Cloud could be a provider that can satisfy all needs. So all that left is actually migrate from all the vendors to the other one. But the migration will differ depending on the company, because it will depend on the culture of the engineering culture, company culture, tech stack, etc. But I think there are three things that, in our case, helped us with the migrations, made it simpler, not simple, that I would like to spend a couple of minutes sharing with you. Those things are Ocado technology platform, FinOps, and something that we call OT data. Starting with Ocado technology platform, this is our internal developer platform. It consists of a few components. Service platform for running and operating application. This is built on top of the AWS. Data intelligence platform, when we provide tooling and services and best practices for managing business data, data ingestion, processing, consumption, sharing, as well as machine learning. Of course, the observability component, so that users can easily instrument their application and use the observability tech stack. A set of developer toolkit, and all that ensure and guarantees the governance and security. Essentially, the goal is to make sure that our engineering teams can spend as much time as possible on solving business needs and delivering business value to our customers rather than solving technical problems over and over again. And why that's important in terms of the migration, it helped us automate and centralize some of the steps in the migration. The scale that we're operating, so we are hosting around 1,200 applications, over 1,500 users that are primarily engineers. We are doing hundreds of deployments every day. We have millions of jobs processing data, and we are processing 4.5 billion business events every day. The second aspect is FinOps. So FinOps has three pillars: inform, operate, and optimize. So we gather the cost from all third-party services that we are using. We gather cost about all the application operation. We ingest it into one place, and we allocate those costs to a single application and or team or individual. And we try to do it as real-time as possible, as the vendors allows us to. Then we have a mechanism to alert when we spot some anomalies, so we can let the engineering team that, hey, last day or last couple of days, your cost increased more than you would expect, so just take a look. We also have a recommendation module that spots some cost efficiency improvements opportunities, so that we can alert and inform, for instance, that you have over-provisioned some of the resources, or you have some data that no one is using, so maybe you should remove that, or put some retention tag on it, etc. And why is it important? It's important because providing the visibility on the cost allow engineering teams and engineering leadership to make decisions about what tools they are going to use and whether their spend is on an okay level. And the third aspect is OT data. They say that there are two big problems in computer science, and naming things is one of them. So that's why I haven't come up with a better name than OT data yet. It stands for Ocado Technology Data. So it's basically a centralized data warehouse where we gather data from different enterprise applications that we are using across Ocado. And we provide a well-governed and high-quality data to the rest of the people in the organization. At the moment, we have like 20 different services that we sync data from. Those are things like Jira, Workday, ServiceNow, GitLab, etc. Right? We try to make it easy for users to use that data, build some dashboards, run some ad hoc analysis, and so on, and teach them how to do that, how to define metrics, how to measure metrics. As one of the mission of my department is enable data-driven decision across the organization. And why that is important is, again, because providing the transparency and access to the data allows leadership and teams make decisions and monitor the progress of different activities, such as migrations, and also monitor impact of those actions. So let's move on to the migrations. I will talk you through two types of migration that we had, metrics migration and logs migration. For metrics migration, we've been moving from New Relic to Grafana, primarily from New Relic metrics and New Relic APM. So first thing that we had to do was to enable our platform and allow our users to use Grafana Cloud services via two ways, either a central configuration repository or through the Terraform providers. Then we wanted to try to incentivize our users to actually adopt those and migrate, sharing a value of it, provide clear information about the costs, benefits, and so on. We also provided a comprehensive documentation, how to migrate guide, and some assistance to do the actual migration, as this migration had to be manual due to New Relic agent that had to be removed from the code base. And also, we had regular meetings with our stakeholders and users where we were monitoring the progress of the migration, spotting issues, discussing what's important to be focusing on now. We were learning that we need to enable a little bit more Grafana services, such as Faro on K6, etc., to enable users to actually fully migrate off of New Relic. This is the architecture, which is not really any special. It's Prometheus scraping data from the application's exposed endpoints and push that data to Grafana Cloud. The second migration is about logs, and our logging architecture and solution looks a little bit more complicated. So it's based on the Logstash log shipper that we host ourselves, and we are pushing logs to OpenSearch clusters on AWS, which is managed or semi-managed. It still requires a lot of effort to properly configure it, scale it, etc. So there was a lot of effort into hosting those clusters. We have around 70 different environments. So this had to be set up 70 times for each of those environments. So it was a pain in provisioning all that and then support it. So what we've done, we again implemented centrally a new way of log shipping. We based that on FluentBit sidecar. So now the logs were directly shipped from the application to the Grafana log key. Then we created a schedule plan. So for each environment that I mentioned, we had a date and a time at which point all the application, after the next redeployment, will start using the new log shipping solution. And because we are fairly mature with CI/CD, we do redeploy our application pretty often due to new feature, upgrades of libraries, security fixes and patches, and so on. So it gave us an opportunity to actually have a very rapid adoption. In some cases, within 24 hours, 50% of the application were redeployed and picked up the new way of sending the logs to the Grafana log key. So we were able to do that migration fully centrally. However, still users had to know what log key is and what's the user interface, what the query language, etc. So we ran some workshops and ask-many-thing sessions with Grafana regularly so that users can learn that too. So we moved from that architecture to something like that. So Firelance sidecar using Unix socket to connect to the application, add the cluster task level in ECS in AWS, and sending those logs to Grafana log key. And this is an example of the adoption at one of our environments. As you can see, we enabled the new way of log shipping 31st of August. And within a day or two, the adoption increased by over 50%. And there is some long tail of adoption for the rest of the application. But still, within a week or two, like almost 100% of apps were migrated. We could have forced the redeployment, but we didn't want to. This 1 or 2 weeks were acceptable. So there were two different types of migration, one kind of platform-driven and the other one user-driven. The platform-driven one could be executed centrally, almost fully automated. It required minimal effort from our users. There was no dual running or very low dual running costs. we were able to have aggressive timeline. As I mentioned, we could actually make it even quicker. We could force to redeploy the application. We can do each environment like every day. We give ourselves time, right? First, of course, we migrate environments that are tests and dev, et cetera, and we followed with production one after a couple of weeks after we get confidence that everything works as it should. However, we weren't taking that much into account everyone's needs, right? So at that point, your application will start sending logs somewhere else. We gave an opportunity to put your application on exclude list if you had really a reason why you shouldn't be using Loki. And one of the main reasons was the size of your logs, as Loki has pretty low for some of the application, low limit on the size of the single log line that you can send to Loki. And we had a couple applications that didn't want to go Loki because of that reason. We could automatically detect that, but we wanted this to be opt-out on request, right? So the users really have reason to do that. Otherwise, we would truncate the log and just send not the entire message to the Loki, just to speed up the migration. The other type of migration was more user-driven because it was difficult to automate it. It required code changes. It was manual. There was a significant dual running cost. So we observed that some of the users, some of the teams set up their Grafana setup, started sending data to Grafana, but then still keep New Relic for some time, right? Just to make sure that everything works, everything is the same, etc. And that could last for weeks or even a couple months, right? So there is a risk of dual running cost. And we gave a generous deadline so that the teams could migrate whenever they feel ready for it, take into account other priorities in their backlogs, etc. So was it worth it? We did simplify our architecture and we made it more reliable, absolutely. We have now much less maintenance on our platform teams. We did achieve significant cost savings, at least for some of the services. And we're definitely interested in all of the adaptive metrics, traces, logs, etc., to get even more, to be more cost efficient. But what's important, we get our ways to manage the cost and optimize it, right? What Grafana does, it provides you that opportunities, which is very important for us, right? Because we can then make a decision whether we want to invest more and spend more on observability, or we want to decide to optimize a little bit more its cost. We accelerated troubleshooting, so having all signals in one place is much easier and convenient for our users. And we reduced this cognitive load that I was mentioning before, right? Now everything is one place. Users don't have to switch between different UIs, different tools, search, copy-paste some request ID and move it to the different tool to look for it. We eliminated closed source, so we future-proofed with OpenTelemetry, Micrometer, and Grafana. So the login migration that I was explaining, now we can do that also for metrics and other signals as well, right? If we have to. So it gives us more flexibility and opportunities. And we empowered our engineers to be more proactive rather than reactive firefighting. When I'm talking to engineers, they are saying that what they notice is that Grafana is actually kind of a framework and toolkit where you can really do much more having all the signals in one place. You just need to learn the tool a little bit more and spend some time to actually know how you can leverage Grafana. But they see already and they're playing with ML modules to alert on some metrics in a much smarter way so that they get alerted if something is going not as expected, much quicker before actually users are impacted by the issue. But it wasn't all great. It wasn't smooth sailing. We had, of course, a set of problems and challenges. As was said yesterday, there are some technical challenges, but if you put talented people and give them time, they will sort the technical issues. So I'm not going into details on those ones. However, the support burden during the migration was much bigger than expected. We knew it would be bigger. We just didn't think it would be 300% increase in our support requests. So that was a problem because the same team that was enabling next Grafana services in our OTP had to provide a support for already existing old stack, as well as people that are migrating. So what we've done is we have something that is called OTP AI Assistant that has all the knowledge from documentation about the OTP and can help you. You can ask that assistant, how I do this and that in OTP, or what's the most efficient way of doing this? And it gives you an answer that is compliant with OTP and how to achieve that using our tools, our libraries, etc. It has a cool feature, which is a support mode. So you can add that assistant to the Slack channel because we are doing support internally through the Slack channels. And that assistant can work in two modes, shadowing modes or like direct mode. So it can either suggest an answer to the person that is on support, like you can try this answer, or just answer directly to the user. And what we also do is the assistant is sharing that answer only when it has high confidence it's the right answer. So something that Grafana shared with the AI assistant about this confidence indicator is really cool feature because we know from experience that's very important aspect of any AI assistance. So there is never enough trainings and documentation. There will always some kind of use cases that you didn't think about and don't put in documentation because it was too obvious or you didn't think about it. So think about it in front and try to provide as comprehensive documentation as possible is also important. Be prepared for difficult and complex use cases. Many of the use cases were fairly simple and teams were adopting Grafana and migrating from Relic to Grafana very easily. But some were a little bit more complex that we had to provide some extra support, enable some additional services, etc. And we try to identify those in advance, but it's difficult. We could have spent a little bit more time on it and try to identify them upfront to have a little bit more time into supporting them. And the dual running cost, as I was explaining earlier, can be expensive. So taking that into consideration and make people aware of that and plan for that and budget for that as well. So that's not the end of our journey. We still have one migration ongoing that is more manual. It's PagerDuty to Grafana IRM. We are around 1/3 done, 2/3 still ahead of us. But we migrated metrics and logs. We adopted traces and Faro and K6 and Tetics and Mail module and a bunch of other Grafana services. We need to implement a solution for some edge cases, and one example is those long log lines, how to support it in OTP in an efficient way so we don't have to keep those OpenSearch clusters running for those cases. We plan to do some further architectural simplification, especially around the metrics, and we are evaluating the sidecar approach that we have for logs, also for metrics, right? And in that case, well, it solves some authentication problems that we have between Prometheus and the endpoints, but as well, it will remove the need for maintaining some additional architecture. We still need to do the final verification of some of our business assumptions. So we know already what happens with the cost and whether the assumptions regarding the cost were correct or not. However, MTTR, number of incidents and incident impacts, it's still a little bit too early, but also it is really difficult to isolate what impacts those metrics, right? We are doing a lot of stuff to make sure that OSP is reliable and up and running. So identifying and isolating how Grafana helps with that versus other activities that we are doing, it's a little bit difficult, but we need to figure out how to do that. And as I mentioned, we try to be as data-driven as possible. So really want to look at those numbers and make sure that we see the positive impact. But as I was saying, it's not the end of our journey. It's actually the first step. Because right now, when we have all signals in one place, we can look at how we can further leverage the one consolidated observability platform. So we are now working together with Grafana to see what we can do to leverage it even more and get more value out of it. And I believe that's it, what I prepared for today. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a great the rest of the day. If you have any questions, please try to find me at the venue and approach me and talk to me. I'll be more than happy to have a conversation, chat, answer any questions. You can reach me on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, safe travel to your homes. Thank you very much.